I used to think my life was perfect, or at least as perfect as a quiet life in a small town could be. I had a stable job, a family that loved me, and a future that looked exactly like a straight, safe line. I was the kind of person who never broke a rule, never missed a deadline, and always stayed within the lines. But that was before I met her. That was before I walked through the heavy iron gates of the state penitentiary, and everything I knew started to burn down. My name is Maya, and I worked as a counselor. I was 29 years old, and for most of my life, I believed that people were either good or bad. I was the person people came to when they were broken, the one who was supposed to have all the answers. I wore my white button-up shirts, pulled my hair back into a neat bun, and carried my clipboard like a shield. I was professional, and I was very good at keeping my emotions in a box. I thought I was untouchable. Then I saw Elena. The first time we met, the air in the room felt different. It was a Tuesday, a gray and rainy day that made the prison walls look even colder than usual. I was sitting in the small, dim intake room, waiting for my next appointment. When the door opened and the guards brought her in, the world seemed to go quiet. She was wearing a gray prison uniform that looked 3 sizes too big for her slim frame, but she didn't look small. She looked powerful. Her dark hair was messy, falling over a sharp jawline that looked like it was carved from stone. She had these intense dark eyes that didn't look like the eyes of the other inmates I had seen. Most women in there looked tired, defeated, or angry. Elena just looked calculating, like she was seeing right through me and the walls behind me. As she sat down across from me, she didn't say a word. She just stared at me. I tried to look at my notes to be the professional counselor I was trained to be. I looked for her name, her age, her crime, Elena, 29 years old, sentenced to 15 years. I didn't want to look at what she had done yet. I wanted to see the person first. "Why are you looking at me like that?" she finally asked. Her voice was low and a bit raspy, like she hadn't spoken in a long time. It sent a jolt through my body that I couldn't explain. "I'm just doing my job, Elena," I replied, trying to keep my hand from shaking as I held my pen. "I'm here to help you adjust to this place." She laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. It was a dry, hollow laugh. "Help me adjust? You want to help me get used to living in a cage? Look at you, Maya. You're more trapped than I am. You have your rules, your little badge, your neat hair. You're afraid to even breathe too loud in here." I felt my face get hot. No inmate had ever spoken to me like that. Usually, they wanted something from me, better food, a phone call, a kind word to the warden. Elena didn't seem to want anything. She just wanted to challenge me. "I'm not the one in the uniform," I said, trying to regain control. She leaned forward, her eyes locking onto mine. "Not yet," she whispered. I didn't know what she meant by that, but for the rest of that day, I couldn't get her out of my head. I went home to my quiet apartment, but the silence felt heavy. I looked at my reflection in the mirror, and for the first time, I saw what she saw. I saw a woman who was playing a part, someone who was living a life that someone else had written for her. The next day, I went back, and the day after that. Our sessions weren't like the ones I had with other prisoners. We didn't talk about rehabilitation or remorse. We talked about life. She told me about the ocean, about how she used to love the feeling of the salt on her skin. She told me about the books she had read and the places she wanted to see. She had a faint scar along her left collarbone, and sometimes when she spoke, her fingers would trace it absent-mindedly. I found myself watching those fingers, wondering about the story behind that scar. "I wasn't always like this," she told me one afternoon. We were in a tiny counseling room, the lighting dim and institutional. A single small window high up on the wall let in a sliver of sunlight that hit the table between us. I made a choice to protect someone I loved, and this is where that choice led me. Would you do the same, Maya? Would you give up your perfect life for someone? I didn't have an answer then. I told myself I was just being a good counselor. I told myself I was building rapport. But deep down, I knew I was lying. I started staying late. I started finding reasons to walk past her cell block. I even started bringing her things, a chocolate bar hidden in my pocket, a book that wasn't on the approved list, a letter I had written to her when I couldn't sleep. I was a counselor, a member of the staff, and I was becoming a smuggler. I was breaking the very rules I had built my life around. And the scariest part? I didn't care. My friends began to notice. "You're different, Maya," my best friend told me over coffee one weekend. "You're distracted. You're always checking your phone and you look tired. Is everything okay at work?" I lied to her. I lied to everyone. How could I tell her that I was falling in love with a woman who was serving 15 years for a violent crime? How could I explain that the highlight of my week was sitting in a gray room, smelling the faint scent of prison soap on Elena's skin? The tension between us grew every day. It was like a string being pulled tighter and tighter. One night, While the prison was quiet, I went to her cell. It was against every protocol, but I couldn't stay away. The guards on that shift knew me and trusted me. They thought I was just doing extra work. When I reached her bars, she was standing there, waiting. It was like she knew I would come. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, her face inches from mine through the cold metal. "I know," I said. She reached her hand through the bars and touched my cheek. Her skin was rough, but her touch was incredibly gentle. I leaned into it, closing my eyes. In that moment, the prison didn't exist. The badge on my chest didn't exist. There was only her. "Maya," she said, her voice trembling. "If you stay on this path, there's no going back. You'll lose everything. Your job, your reputation, your freedom. Is a girl like me worth all that?" I looked into her eyes, those dark, deep eyes that had become my whole world. I thought about my safe, boring life. I thought about the straight line I had been walking. And then I thought about a life with her, even if it was a life on the run, a life in the shadows. "Yes," I whispered, "you are." That was the night we started planning. She told me she couldn't stay in there anymore. The walls were closing in, and she was afraid she would lose her mind. She needed a way out, and she needed someone on the outside to help her. She needed me. I spent the next month living a double life. During the day, I was a perfect professional. I took notes, attended meetings, and spoke to other inmates. But at night, I was studying the prison security schedules. I was learning when the guards changed shifts, which gates were left unlocked for maintenance, and where the cameras had blind spots. I was no longer just a counselor. I was an accomplice. I bought a cheap car with cash and parked it 3 blocks away from the prison. I gathered clothes, money, and fake IDs. Every time I looked at my parents or my friends, I felt a stab of guilt, knowing that I was about to disappear from their lives forever. I was sacrificing my family, my career, and my safety for a woman I barely knew outside of a cage. But whenever I saw Elena, all that fear vanished. She was my sun, and I was a planet being pulled into her orbit. I believed her when she said we would be happy. I believed her when she said we were meant to be together. The night of the escape was the longest night of my life. My heart was beating so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. I had the key card I had stolen from a distracted guard. I had the map. I had the plan. I walked toward her block, my footsteps echoing on the concrete floor. The air felt thick, like I was walking through water. I reached her cell, my hands shaking so much I almost dropped the card. Beep. The lock clicked. The heavy door swung open with a groan that sounded like a scream in the quiet hall. Elena stepped out, her eyes bright with a mix of fear and excitement. She took my hand, and for a second, we just stood there, breathing in the same air without a barrier between us. "Ready?" she asked. "Ready," I replied. We started to run. We moved through the shadows, avoiding the sweep of the searchlights. We made it past the first gate, then the second. My lungs were burning, and my mind was screaming at me to stop, to go back, to save myself. But I didn't stop. I kept holding her hand. We reached the final fence. I had used a pair of heavy cutters to make a hole earlier that day, hiding it behind some bushes. We crawled through, the sharp wires scratching my arms, but I didn't feel the pain. We were out. We were standing on the grass, the wind blowing through her hair. For the first time in her life, Elena was breathing the air of freedom with me by her side. We ran to the car, got in, and I floored it. As the lights of the prison faded in the rearview mirror, I felt a strange mix of terror and joy. I had done it. I had sacrificed everything. I had thrown away my entire life for her. But as I looked at Elena in the passenger seat, watching her stare at the passing trees with a strange, cold smile, a tiny voice in the back of my head whispered a question I wasn't ready to answer. As we drove away from the prison, the silence in the car felt different. Back in the counseling room, our silence was full of tension and unspoken words. Now, out in the open, it felt heavy and cold. I kept my eyes on the road, my knuckles white as I gripped the steering wheel. Every set of headlights behind us looked like a police cruiser. Every shadow on the side of the road looked like a trap. "We did it," I said, my voice cracking. I wanted her to look at me. I wanted her to tell me she loved me, that we were safe, and that all the laws I had broken were for a greater good. Elena didn't look at me. She was staring out the window at the dark woods passing by. "Yeah," she whispered, "we did. We reached a small, cheap motel near the border of the next state. I had paid for it in cash weeks ago under a fake name." As we walked into the room, the smell of stale cigarettes and cheap cleaner hit me. It was a far cry from the life I had left behind, but to me, it was our first home. I turned to hug her, to finally feel her heart beating against mine without the fear of a guard walking by. But Elena stepped back. She walked over to the window and peered through the curtains. "We need to move fast, Maya," she said. Her voice was different. It wasn't a soft, raspy voice from the prison. It was sharp, professional. "The car is too recognizable. We need to swap it by morning. I have the money, I said, trying to sound helpful. I took everything from my savings. We have enough to get across the country. She turned then, and the look in her eyes stopped my heart. It wasn't the look of a woman in love. It was the look of a hunter who had finally found the exit. Good, she said. Give it to me. What? I asked, confused. I mean, we can go together to find a new car. I saw a dealership a few miles back. Maya, listen to me. She interrupted, stepping closer. She put her hands on my shoulders, but they didn't feel like a caress. They felt like a restraint. The police are going to be looking for a counselor and an inmate together. If we stay together, we're both going back. I need to go ahead. I'll set things up, find a safe house, and then I'll send for you. The world felt like it was tilting. This wasn't the plan. We were supposed to disappear together. We were supposed to be us against the world. No, I said, my voice rising. I didn't sacrifice my career and my family to be left in a motel room. I did this so we could be together. Elena's face hardened. The soft Elena I thought I knew, the one who loved books and the ocean, vanished. You did this because you were bored, Maya. You did this because you wanted to feel like a hero. But this is the real world. In the real world, I'm a fugitive and you're a criminal who hasn't been caught yet. She walked over to my bag, the one containing all the cash I had spent years saving. She didn't even ask. She just took the envelope. Elena, stop, I cried, reaching for her. She pushed me back. It wasn't violent, but it was strong. I fell onto the bed, staring at her in shock. She looked at the door, then back at me. For a split second, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, maybe regret, maybe pity. You're a good person, Maya. That was your first mistake, she said. Before I could say another word, she was gone. I heard the car engine start, the car I had bought for our escape. I heard the tires gravel as she pulled out of the parking lot. And then, there was only the sound of the air conditioner humming in the wall. I sat on that bed for hours. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I was too empty. I looked at my hands, the same hands that had typed up reports and held a clipboard now stained with the dust of a prison break. I had given up my home, my parents, my reputation, and my future. I had committed a felony for a woman who didn't even know my favorite color. The sun started to rise, casting a pale light through the motel curtains. I knew what would happen next. Soon, the prison would do the morning head count. They would find the empty cell. They would find my badge lying on the floor. They would see the security footage. My face would be on every news channel by noon. I had no money. I had no car. I had no plan. I walked into the small bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. I looked at my reflection. I didn't recognize a woman looking back. She looked older. She looked broken. But she also looked awake. I walked to the nightstand and picked up the motel phone. My fingers didn't shake this time. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't fix what I had done, but I could stop being a pawn in someone else's game. I dialed the number for the local police station. My name is Maya Tanaka, I said when a voice answered. I was a counselor at the state prison. I helped an inmate escape last night. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I'm at the Sunset Motel, room 12, I continued. Please come get me. As I hung up the phone, I sat back down on the bed. I thought about Elena, somewhere out there, driving into a new life with my money in my car. I wondered if she ever really loved me, or if I was just the easiest lock she ever picked. I looked out the window as the first police sirens began to wail in the distance. They were coming for me. My life as I knew it was over. I was going from the counselor's chair to the inmate's cot. Was it worth it? As the blue and red lights began to flash against the motel walls, I realized the answer didn't matter anymore. The sacrifice was made. The price was paid. And as the door burst open and the officers ordered me to put my hands up, I felt a strange, cold peace. I wasn't a hero. I wasn't a savior. I was just a woman who had lost everything to find out who she really was. And as the handcuffs clicked shut around my wrists, the same sound I had heard 1,000 times in the prison halls, I finally understood what Elena meant. The bars were always there. I just finally decided to see them.